Hey, so welcome to the very first episode of the FLŌ TRIBE podcast. So in this episode, I had the chance to sit down with Sam Goulden. So Sam is a golf professional, he's a teacher, and he's an entrepreneur who launched the MNML Golf Company not that long ago. Now, even if you're not into golf, I highly recommend you give this a chance because we don't actually talk about the technical side of golf. What we talk about is the mental game. We talk about the importance of focus. We talk about flow states. We talk about something that Sam introduced me to, which is this idea of MicroMeditations. So like I said, even if you're not into golf, I think a lot of what we talk about applies to all kinds of things, other sports, life in general. And in the second part of this interview, which we'll be releasing a little bit later, we're going to dive into the entrepreneur side of what Sam has going on. And he's got some really interesting lessons to share there too. So here's my conversation with Sam Goulden. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So first of all, let's just start with an introduction.
Okay.
A little bit about, your story, where you come from, and what got you into golf. Maybe not dive too deep into that, but just kind of like the highlights of what got you to where you are now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I grew up around St. Louis, lived there for most of my, the first part of my adult life. Got into golf because there was a golf team forming at my high school. I'd played a little bit with my friends, but never really was super serious into it. And then one of the kids on the team was really good, and his grandfather sponsored a team so that he'd have a high school team to compete on. So before that, there was no high school team. It was my senior year, and I was like, you know what? I think I could golf, so I'm gonna try to do that. So I worked my butt off and got good enough to make the team. I was like the fourth guy on the team, and that got me into it. And then after that, I didn't play much for about a year. There wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for me in a small town. Didn't grow up in a country club or have that background at all. So it was really fun, but I didn't see it going further than that. And then about a year and a half later, a new course opened in our town, and I was going to community college, really unsure of what I was going to do. And I got a job at this course, cleaning range balls and pulling carts out in the morning, and I got free range balls, and I just got completely hooked. So in about a year, I went from shooting, mid 80s from the white tees to my first handicap card under par was about 18 months from the time that I got that job. So. Wow. I got to a plus 0.5 in about 18 months. So
nice.
I was pretty addicted, pretty hooked, wasn't thinking about competing at all. But that kid from my high school team was playing on a college team at that point, and he came back to town, and we played around a golf together, and he was like, dude, you got really good. Like, what happened? And I told him, I was like, I don't really know. I'm just trying to get better at this thing. And he said, yeah, we could use you on our team. So he actually got me, I played around with the coach and the best player on the team. And I played really well, like probably too well. And the best player on the team told the coach after that round, he was like, we need this guy on the team.
Nice.
So I got a scholarship to play in college. Had a good college experience, but was never really good enough to compete with the rest of the guys out there. Ended up just teaching after that. Got crazy into it. Went to every top teacher I could find. Read every book I could read pre-YouTube, right? And just got pretty good at teaching. And along the way, got a little bit better at golf. And that's what led me to move to California. In 2009, I felt like I wanted to compete full time, and I've been playing some section events in St. Louis, and just wanted to compete full time. So moved out to California and started playing on the Golden State Tour, and ran out of money really quick. That led me to publishing some online content to help pay the bills, and that kind of all led me here.
That's really interesting. I think the fact that you used your kind of, not failure, but let's call it a bit of a failure at competing,
for sure.
But turned it into something positive, right? And I think you would also mention that you found yourself offering tips to a lot of the players on tour and realizing, you know what, maybe I'm more of a teacher than I am of a competitor.
Yeah.
Is that about right? Yeah.
I think I always knew that. Like, people would ask me, why don't you try to compete? And I would say, like, I really just love coaching. You know, I think that's my passion. But at some point I felt like I owed it to myself to see if I could win.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I started competing full time, really. Not because I had this deep passion or drive to win on the PGA Tour. I just wanted to see if I could do it.
Yeah, and I also think though that your experience competing makes you a better teacher.
100%.
It's really hard to teach someone to compete if you've never competed yourself, even if you don't do that well. You go through the process of, preparing for a tournament, being in a tournament, understanding what people should expect. It's way easier to use that experience and then teach it to others than if you've never gone through it yourself, right?
Yeah, and you also figure out what's important. Like in the
exactly.
whole grand scheme of things, what is really, really important.
Yeah.
And as a player who spent like 20 years trying to figure out to learn everything, like the more I learned, the more I realized that the more I learned, a lot of that stuff wasn't what was making the difference for players.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, piece 6.5 wrist flexion. It wasn't that. It was, what were they thinking before they even took the club back?
Yeah.
Sometimes the greatest player, the best guys, the best swings don't perform because of just what's going on in their head. So yeah, you can go really far down that path and then find out like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm looking at stuff that, for me as a player, when I was competing, I'm trying to make these perfect golf swings, and I've got a mind state that's not in a great place to win or compete at the level I want to compete at. So I learned that perfect golf swings don't win golf tournaments in a golf tournament.
Yeah, the mind does.
The mind does, exactly.
Right? And I think as someone who's played a lot of golf personally, the most frustrating thing in the world is having that great swing, hitting a perfect drive, hitting a really great second shot, and then 3-putting a bogey, right? Yeah. Where suddenly you feel like, I've got this, but suddenly your inability to focus at that crucial moment on that last little putt just cost you what should have been a par, right? And I think that's the thing about golf that's a little bit different than other sports, is something we touched on, which is this idea of MicroMeditations. Is you can be in that really nice zone for most of the hole, but if you snap out of it for that one shot, it could destroy the performance for that hole. Right?
Yeah, that word micro meditation, or that hyphenated word, it's really cool. I learned that I had never like known or felt the sensations or the presence in my body before this one summer where I'd committed, through the help of a coach, Dr. Joseph Parent, and through some other people, but I'd committed to making a full pre-shot routine where I exhaled fully before I started walking in to every shot. And when I started doing that, like really, really exhaling, I could feel all the tension in my body release.
Nice.
And so I was playing at that time like 36 holes a day, and I was practicing on the range in that manner. So I wasn't just hitting ball after ball. I'd do a full pre-shot routine because that's what I was working on. And so, I found out that every single shot, now I would say every single shot was a little micro meditation, because I went from this place of like, okay, blah, 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 what club, what, all this stuff, what's my score, to, okay, I have the club, I have the goal for the shot. Now, release all the tension and focus on the shot. Yeah. And that one little, it ends up lasting probably like 8 seconds from like there to hitting the shot. But doing that all day long, after the round, after like 3 or 4 days, and it was really only like probably 3 or 4 days, I found myself noticing when I was holding tension. Yeah. And I realized that I could just breathe out that tension anytime I had it. And so I learned how to become aware of my body, which is like through golf, which is really, really a cool thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what most athletes at some point in their career realize, that, okay, I've acquired all the technical skill I need to perform at a high level. What's missing often is the mind. What's missing is the ability to break things, to slow down the game, right? They talk about that in football and soccer and basketball, is the ability to slow down the game. Because at that level especially, things happen very fast. And it's those guys that are able to slow things down in their mind and see things differently. Those are the guys that are able to perform, right? And I think golf's the same way. It's so easy, especially after a bad shot. You miss that one shot. It's so easy to let your mind start thinking about the next shot. Oh, and I better make this one or else. And then you miss that one. Oh boy. And then you end up on this spiral, and then it's all over.
Well, it's amazing that a sport that goes so slow in everybody else, and everybody else's perspective, from everyone else's perspective, it took you 7 minutes to get from the tee box to the fairway. Yeah. But I guarantee you, when Justin Rose was trying to win a gold medal, that 7 minutes was like a flash, because I use Justin Rose actually because one of my friends coaches him on the mental game, but that space from here to there, he was probably doing like presence motivated process as he was walking down the fairway. But if you've got like, okay, like I need to hit this next shot, and like this is my relation to the field, and I'm leading by this, and so if I make a par, and then like, okay, what am I going to have in? You have all of these thoughts that fill that time. So really, it just like happens in a snapshot. Now you're ready to hit the ball, and if you can, like you said, slow that down and really just experience all of it. That's really where we want to be, right? We just want to be experiencing all of it in the present time.
Yeah, and I think what you're touching on too is golf. Yes, the performance of golf is the swing, is the shot, right? But I think you also have to include what happens in between those shots, right? From, you hit a great drive, what's happening in your mind from walking from the tee box to the ball, right? That might impact what happens on the next shot.
Oh,
and then the one after that, and the one after that. And I think that that's part of it also, is what's going on, what's your conversation there. And I think it's also different if you're playing with a bunch of people versus if you're playing by yourself, or if you're playing in a tournament versus playing a fun round with friends. Like, it's going to kind of, or the course, or the elements, all of these things kind of factor in. And I think what you touched on is that pre-shot routine. No matter what different circumstances are involved in that particular round, have the same familiar pre-shot routine to keep that consistency. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And the pre-shot routine, I remember when people, like, I've always been a little bit of a doubter. I don't know why, but I've always kind of questioned, like I hear you saying I have to do that, but why do I have to do it? Yeah. So when I heard pre-shot routine was really important, and the pros had a 7-second pre-shot, the same time pre-shot routine every time. So they're going through the same process every time. I was like, it just looks like a lot of fidgeting to me. Yeah. I just see this guy who gets up there and then he waggles and he waggles again. I'm like, those aren't purposeful. That's not a purposeful move. It's just a habit. And does the habit actually serve him? We don't know. So for me, it's about a purposeful and serving pre-shot routine. And it takes some time to build one of those, but I have a routine so I'll give you an example. I was in the desert last week filming some content for an app. And I had this girl Maya's pitching wedge because I forgot my pitching wedge and we were talking about pitching wedge. So I've got Maya's pitching wedge and we're in between takes and I'm like, I'm going to hit that flag stick. It was probably, I have no idea, maybe I'm guessing like 115 yards away.
Okay.
So I'm standing there next to Jacob and Maya's over there and I'm like, I'm going to hit that flag stick. So first one, I hit this big sweeping hook, misses by like 20 yards. I'm like, okay, now I know the club.
Yeah.
Next one, hit the flag stick.
Nice.
So I've got no business with someone else's club, not knowing the yardage, not knowing it's a range ball. There's so many factors. It's my second swing of the day, right? Yeah. Hitting a flag stick, which is 3/4 of an inch or whatever, half an inch, 115 yards away, it's a ridiculous feat. I've got no business saying I'm going to hit the flag stick. Yeah. But I know, this goes back to the pre-shot routine, I know that if I go through a series of steps, I give myself a chance to hit the flag stick. Yeah. And I believe that I give myself the highest possible chance ever if I go through these steps. Yeah. And so then it's at that point, I can get my body out of the equation because my physiology is out of my control at that point. I had 2 cups of coffee, I slept this much, I drove, I was tired, whatever. Physiology can't perform the shot, maybe can or can't perform the shot that I intend. But if I go through this series of steps, I know I'm in the best chance possible. So now it's just up to my physiology to try to perform it. So then I'm like, well, okay, I actually might be able to hit the flag stick. I don't know what my
You are physically capable of hitting that flag stick.
Yes, I know for a fact that I can. Yeah. But I don't know if my body's going to perform it in that moment. But I know that if I go through this process, it gives me the best possible chance. So now when I'm on the golf course, there's no need for me to do anything else. Yeah. Like there's no, like if it's the 18th hole or the first hole or the 7th hole or the 6th hole, if it's for birdie or par or bogey, none of that matters because to perform my best action, my mind I can go through a series of steps that puts me in position to form my best action. So it doesn't matter what it's for. I don't need to perform any differently. I just need to go through A, B, C, and D. Yeah. And I know that I'm going to be in position to, if my physiology is allowed to do it that day, to go ahead and perform.
Yeah, and I think what you're touching on is this idea of taking control of the moment, right? So that pre-shot routine, whatever it is you dictating the circumstances of that moment versus the moment kind of taking over.
Fully,
right?
Absolutely.
Because
that's a great way to put
same
it.
thing for me is in golf. Sometimes you're like, you get to the ball, you're excited, or you're not excited. It could go either way, and you just set up and you hit, and you're like, and you miss your shot, and you realize that's not how I usually do that, right? I didn't take my time. I didn't ground my club. I didn't do what I usually do.
After the fact.
Yeah, and after the fact, you realize, and it's like, what happened? How did I lose control of this moment? And you regret it, right? There's this sense of instant regret, like, oh. So for me, it was really just a deep breath before every shot.
Yeah.
If I take the moment to take a deep breath, now I have a little bit more elaborate because I'm better and I have a better understanding of my swing and all that. But at least I said, at least if I take this one deep breath, I'm taking control of this moment. Whatever happens after that, that's, did I put in the work? Did I practice? Is my shot, am I capable of performing this thing?
Yeah.
But at least that deep breath gives me a sense of control, calms my nerves, and allows me to perform. And like you said, after that, it's performance takes over.
Yeah.
Right? Am I able to hit this shot or not? But at least I'm giving myself the best possible chance at hitting this shot properly.
Yeah, that's that deep breath, just becoming present to the moment will allow you to then focus on the task at hand.
Yeah.
Versus whatever else was in your head, which is ridiculous. Like, why would we be thinking about anything else
than the shot?
But we're thinking about a million things other than the shot.
Well, especially if you're playing well. I think sometimes playing well is the worst thing because suddenly it's like, oh, I'm playing well. Oh, I'm going to shoot this. Oh, I've never shot this before.
This is the biggest conversation that I have with all of my students now that I didn't know I needed to have until about a year ago. But that once the player's ability has gotten better than, so how long have you been playing?
Maybe 15, 20 years.
Okay, so
on and off, but yeah.
Over the course of that time period, you've built this body of work that we could put a label on.
Yeah.
Because if you average out all those scores, it's going to be, X, right?
Yeah.
If you take a month, if you do like my month boot camp, you go from your average here becomes completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because your short game gets 50 to 100% better by doing the boot camp, and then your full swing gets 50% to 100% more competent. You get more competent at hitting the ball solid. So who you were in your mind, this combination of all these scores and experiences in golf is this number, this X, somewhere in your past.
Yep.
And now at this present moment, after you've done the boot camp, you are so far from that guy. That guy's somewhere in the middle of when you started and where you were a month ago.
Yeah.
So that's not even a very good representation of who you were, that average. But now you just leapt like so far ahead of where you thought you were that I have to have a conversation with you to say, okay, listen, let's go play your home course in a little virtual round. It's an hour-long conversation, and we start on the first tee, and I say, okay, now, given your current skill set, if on this first hole, what club do you think would give you the best chance at getting you a tee shot in play? And they'll say, probably just hit my hybrid and I could get a tee shot in play. And I'll say, okay, great. If you hit that tee shot in play with your hybrid, a decent shot, I'm not talking like a great shot, just a decent shot, where would you be? And they'll say, maybe right fairway or a little bit in the rough or whatever, 150 yards out. I'll say, okay, what club is that? How many times would you hit the green, given your current skills? How many times should you hit the green, or do you expect to hit the green from 150 yards with your 8-iron? And they'd say, I'd say about 50% of the time I should, based on my recent experience. And I'd say, okay, now for the times that you hit the green, based on your current ability to putt, based on everything we've done for the last month, how many times should you 3-putt? And they're like, no, I don't 3-putt anymore. I'm like, great. So half the time you're going to make a par. And then when you miss the green, I know the averages of people when they miss the green, how far. So it's like 13 yards from the hole. So based on the work that they've done, I say, when you're 13 yards away from the hole, how often will you get it up and down? And they say, about at least 80%. And I'm like, sweet. So you're going to make a par half the time, and then you're going to make a par 4 out of 5 times on the others. So out of 10 times playing this hole, you're only going to make 1 bogey. So your score on this hole is 4.1.
Yeah.
And then they say, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then we do that for every single hole, and we get to the end of the round, and I say, hey, your score, based on your current ability with average shots, is about 78. And for some people, that's like 15 shots better than what they were shooting. And so that's like a super enlightening moment where they're like, holy shit, that's true.
Yeah.
I should be shooting 78.
Yeah. But it's the belief.
And you have to build that belief.
You have to build the
blow up the old
because
paradigm.
you'll self-sabotage. Like self-sabotage.
Exactly.
And I think this is a great analogy for life, right?
True.
Where suddenly success starts to happen in anything. And if you're not 100% convinced that you deserve that success, you'll find ways to screw it up.
Yep.
Right? Because that's your go-to, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes it's that fear of success.
And I don't
That's
even
worse
think
than
it's
the fear of failure.
I don't even think it's a fear of success. It's just an uncomfortable, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
Like, and that's
Imposter
true. Like,
syndrome, right? What they call it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it happens in reverse too. Like the bounce back statistic on the PGA Tour, the guy, after you make a bogey, do you make a birdie or better on the next hole? Tiger led that category for his whole career because he never believed he should ever be over par. And he believed it so strongly that the second he made a mistake and was over par,
he corrected.
birdie.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in reverse.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of our work is just being able to recognize where we are now, and that golfer that we once were is just some average. He doesn't even exist ever again. So right now, who you are as a golfer is different from all of your average and what you believe you are. And then if you have done some work, you got to put in a little time to learn who this new golfer is. So when you do make a double bogey, you're like, I'm not that guy anymore.
Yep.
Like the guy I'm thinking of in my head, he sent me an email on Valentine's Day a couple days ago for us now that we're shooting this. And he was like, hey, Sam, I just want to let you know I shot 81. This guy was shooting between 90 and 100 for who knows how long, you know? And he's like, that. I just wanted to let you know. That was the day after that conversation we had when we went through his whole course and said he should be shooting 78.
It's the power of the mind, man.
It's so powerful. I mean, and it's not just like we're saying, I'm not like saying like, just think you're great and you'll be great. But you've got to believe that you're good enough to shoot this score before you can shoot it. Yeah. Like there is no.
But I think also the mind is great and all, for sure. I'm totally on board with that. But you also have to put in the work, right? Like
you have to put in the work to build
get
the
to
belief.
the point. Yeah, absolutely. And then the belief will make you want to work harder.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the secret to all great athletes in any sport is the amount of work they're willing to invest in their craft.
Yeah.
And no amount of flow states or meditations or visualizations are going to repeat the thousands of golf shots that you're going to take in preparation to get to that level.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, even the best in the world are out there constantly honing their craft, constantly improving, constantly trying to get that. And I think the higher you go up the ladder, the smaller those changes are. Like these incremental, tiny little changes, but that consistently help them. But I think also that work strengthens your belief.
Absolutely.
Right? Even if the work doesn't get you there necessarily, it strengthens your mind.
It may not even be the work. Like it's, there's a lot of like Kobe quotes going around, and
of course.
Some of my favorites are that one was like, you know, you should work as hard as you can possibly work, but just know that as hard as you work, I'll be working a little harder.
I'll be working harder. Yeah, I'll be there before you and I'll be there after you leave.
There's like a great, this guy comes into LA. I can't remember the player's name because I don't follow basketball too closely, but he comes into LA and he like gets to the gym. He's like, I'm going to get in there early. Yeah. He gets in and Kobe's there. Yeah. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I'll just practice for a while. And Kobe's there and Kobe's there and Kobe's there. And like the end of the day, it's like, you know, it's 8 o'clock at night or something. And he's like, this guy's still here. And he's like, well, I don't want to leave until Kobe leaves. And like later, so the guy finally ends up leaving and Kobe stays. And later Kobe tells him, he's like, dude, I wasn't even planning on, like, I just came to the gym early and I saw you were there. So I started practicing to beat you to practice. And then I left. I wouldn't leave until you left. Yeah. So I was playing the same game with you. I would have left 3 hours ago. But like to that guy, it's just the difference between what you're willing to do to build that belief. And I think Kobe knew that he was the hardest practicer in the game. And so that built his belief. I work harder than anybody, so I should be better. And it also builds their belief in him. So that person who he practiced harder than is like, I can't keep up with Kobe. I could never practice 12 hours a day. He all of a sudden thinks Kobe practices 12 hours a day, and he doesn't. Yeah. But because
just that one time he got into the guy's head.
So when they're on the court, who's going to win that battle mentally?
Yeah.
Kobe's going to win it every time because this guy already believes Kobe practices harder than he does.
Yeah. Or recently finding out that Rory Mcilroy works with a mental coach.
Yeah.
Right? He's #1 in the world. He's got everything going. Why would he need a mental coach? Because he understands that to stay there is harder than getting there.
Yeah.
Right? I believe that. I think it's one thing to get to the top, but once you're there, staying there is going to be a lot harder than it was to necessarily get there.
I think so too. That fight to the top is so easy. When I look back at like how hard I worked, I mean, I was that guy who was like, you won't beat me. Like I did 4 hours of short game every day. We can go out on the PGA Tour and ask every single person how much short game work do you do every day consistently, and I don't think any of them are going to say 4 hours.
Yeah.
You know, but that's what I did because I wanted to be that guy, and I never felt like the work was hard, and I was never worried about doing the work. And it was all just like, if I keep doing the work, I'm going to get there. If I keep doing the work, I'm going to get there. But once you get there, it's a whole new ballgame. Yeah. Once you're there, now what? Yeah. Is there a new level of amount of work
and maybe finding the motivation to keep working, right? Like now you're shooting the scores you wanted to shoot. Okay, what's the next goal? Right. So if you don't have a goal, it's easy to get lazy, and then suddenly you start slipping a little bit. And
that happens with everyone.